In a throwback to our first ever Minuteman Moment over 2 years ago, we're covering the lack of justice for our brave veterans. Hi, I'm Ben, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so we can beat YouTube's algorithm and get this video to as many gun owners as possible. Now imagine carrying a firearm overseas, only to come home and find out you can't protect yourself or your family in your own home. Why? Because some pencil-pushing bureaucrats infringed on your rights and you missed the letter in the mail. Look, truth is, no one should have their rights denied. But what the Department of Veterans Affairs is doing is absolutely insane. What they're saying is, if you have a fiduciary, someone who helps veterans with their financial benefits, that means you're a mental defective. That's the same as someone who is too insane to stand trial or has been committed to a mental institution. Look, my poor spending habits on gear and energy drinks are my own problem, but that shouldn't disqualify me from being able to defend myself. And that's how it is for the rest of us non-veterans. If you get a fiduciary to help you with your investments, you don't lose your guns. ATF and FBI don't immediately throw you into a background check system. But that's how the VA thinks. Their definition of what a mental defective is goes even further than ATF rules and regulations. I almost didn't think it would be possible for an agency to be more anti-gun than the ATF. But here we are. Now, how many people are affected by this? A dozen? A few hundred? Wrong. Nearly 250,000 veterans are on a prohibited persons list for not being able to properly balance a checkbook. Now, GOA has been calling on Congress and the White House to fix this injustice since the Clinton administration, the ones who started this whole mess. But not to worry, this year, Congress is working with GOA to finally undo this disgrace. Just recently, the Committee of Veterans Affairs held a markup on H.R. 705, the Veterans 2A Protection Act. This act would ensure that no bureaucrat would be able to decide who is and isn't fit to own a gun. Why don't we check out a few clips from that testimony? To set the scene for y'all, the VA administrators are trying to prevent people from their natural right to self-defense, saying it's for their own good. But what they don't realize is that by denying people their fundamental rights, they're pushing people away from the help that they need. They won't admit that though. Listen to Representative Rosendale tear into one of these bureaucrats over just this.
I'm concerned anytime a veteran doesn't want to seek care or assistance, but I do not believe this process is a deterrent. I do not believe it's a deterrent, and that's why I'm here to
Mr. Burke, I will tell you that I have had veterans come to me and declare that they are not seeking help because they are concerned about their Second Amendment rights being violated. Thank you very much.
And my point, sir, would be that we can together work.
Mr. Burke, I've got veterans who have quoted to me, okay? Quoted to me and come to me and said that they are concerned about their Second Amendment rights being violated, and that is why they are not seeking help.
Chairman Bost echoed this with his statement.
What we're disagreeing on here is the fact that a constitutional right is not being secured for our veterans and can be taken away by a bureaucrat's ruling. That's a problem. Any other person in this nation, besides a veteran, can go and receive a fiduciary. They're having trouble with their finances at home. They can receive a fiduciary. That doesn't mean that they're a danger to themselves or others. If they are a danger to themselves or others, there are reporting bodies. It can be a family member. It can be law enforcement. It can be others. You and your office could say, we believe that they are. We believe that this person is danger to themselves or others. Then it goes to a court of law. What we're doing and what we're doing with the process, you can say you've interpreted the way you want, but what we're doing with the process is we're punishing our veterans for simply seeking help.
And even worse, the whole time throughout the hearing, the VA said, oh, we're just complying with federal law. Oh, we're just doing what we're told. It gets even more ridiculous. Representative Rosendale once again tears into these gun grabbers about how veterans are being treated worse than criminals.
Mr. Burke, with your previous statement, we've already established that veterans who need a fiduciary to manage their benefits are not always a danger to themselves or others. Current law treats them as being dangerous because they're unable to own a gun if they have a fiduciary. This is just simply false, a false premise. Do you think that a veteran who needs a fiduciary is mentally defective? Mr. Burke?
Well, I think the mere placement of somebody in our fiduciary program is based on the premise that they were found to be unable to manage their funds.
Mr. Burke, Do you believe that a veteran who needs a fiduciary is mentally defective?
In most cases, a veteran that's been appointed a fiduciary does have mental impairment or a mental issue that has caused them to be unable to manage their funds.
That is just stunning to me that you would sit here and say that you think that a veteran who has a fiduciary is mentally defective. Under the current law, procedural due process is violated because a veteran is not afforded a proper pre-deprivation hearing before the imposition of firearm restrictions. I'm very concerned that the VA is treating veterans who need helping managing their money as criminals. Under this policy, anyone who uses the services of a firm to manage their books, a bookkeeping service, would be subject to surrendering their firearms and their Second Amendment rights. This is as ridiculous as it is dangerous.
Now, the anti-gunners obviously responded, specifically the ranking member, Representative Takano. His issue with this whole hearing wasn't that veterans were being denied their rights. It wasn't that they were being treated like criminals for not being able to budget properly. No, his issue was it would end VA's ability to infringe on these veterans' rights. What an absolute loser.
Say that the judicial process you're thinking of bringing in would effectively end VA's ability to put anyone on the next list. And we have at least 1/3 that definitely should be there, and I reel back.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back from the cringe, and we're gonna go with something base now. Bob Carey, head of the National Defense Committee, which exists to protect veterans' civil liberties, laid down a hot take immediately.
I'm going to probably be somewhat contrarian here, but I believe there are no constitutional rights to due process or to ownership of guns. These rights are inalienable and pre-exist the Constitution. The 2nd, 5th, and 14th Amendments don't grant those rights. They restrain the federal government from impinging upon those rights. And that is what is not being provided by the current fiduciary program. The fiduciary program is effectively a gun control program. It does not matter who takes away the gun rights.
Bob here is 100% correct. The Second Amendment isn't guaranteed by the Constitution. It's a natural right that no bureaucrat, no agency, no person can take away from you. He also nails it on the head about how this program isn't about helping veterans. It's about gun control. Representative Van Ordway also raises another point about this. Like I said earlier, the VA wants to claim this is to protect veterans, to lower suicide rates. There's a major problem here. But preventing veterans from receiving the healthcare that they need by removing the rights they fought for is insane. He says as much to the Duke PhD that talks about how this program is actually beneficial.
What we have to do is something more difficult, and that is to figure out who are the people who pose such a high risk of harming themselves or others that it is justified.
Mr. Swanson, you're a
limit their
clinical
Second
psychologist who's been in this field for almost 40 years, and you haven't figured it out yet? Then maybe you should look at a different vocation, sir.
I think we've made a lot of progress on that score, and I think we
We have
some
not.
evidence.
Veteran suicide's increasing. That's not true. That is not true. We've spent $19 billion in 2023 on suicide prevention, and suicides are increasing.
We need
So
to-
your methodology has been proven to be bad.
Truth be told, the major issue of veteran suicide is complex and isn't black and white. But infringing on our service members' rights is never acceptable. That's why GOA stands ready to defend their rights at all times. But here's some good news on this whole situation. And just like I said in an earlier video, this is exactly why appropriations matter. In the Military Construction and Veteran Affairs budget, Chairman Bost introduced an amendment to prevent the VA from adding any additional names to the NIC system. It passed 228 to 206. In fact, 6 Democrats voted yes to end this injustice. Meanwhile, Representative Brian Fitzpatrick was the sole Republican to vote no. We're happy that the swamp lost this battle and veterans no longer have to fear about losing their rights when they seek help. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on GOA's latest fights for your rights.